By the time we saw the silhouette in the dark, the sky was already bleeding. It wasn't supposed to be here. We weren't supposed to matter. The last sunrise on Darsa 5 was gray, a colorless whisper of light that barely pushed through the ash-veiled sky. Where cities once shimmered with trade, laughter, and glass towers, now there was only silence. Scorched stone and dust so thick it drowned the lungs. Ava Roslin stood at the edge of the crater where her father's observatory used to be. Her exosuit hissed faintly as it filtered radiation from the air, but the crack in her helmet visor had spread overnight, spider webbing closer to her left eye. She didn't care. 20 clicks west, the remains of the Darsan resistance huddled beneath a fractured geothermal station. 62 survivors, half of them children, all of them waiting for something that would never come. She knew the math. The Xeraxis Empire had burned 15 colonies in 8 months. Their fleet moved like storms, sudden, deliberate, and without mercy. Humanity hadn't won a single engagement since Cinder's fall. No reinforcements had arrived in 172 days. Darsa 5 was marked as lost. Ava had read the decrypted signals herself. They were alone. And yet, each night, she came to the crater. Because that's where the beacon was buried. Her father had built it from the bones of a crashed scout frigate decades ago. She remembered him tuning its frequency with oil-stained fingers, calling. Into the void not for help, but for memory. He called it the Grave Singer. But Ava had changed its signal. When the orbital grid fell and the capital city blinked out in fire, she rewired the beacon. She didn't know who might hear. Maybe no one. Maybe a drifting salvage drone or a pirate relay. Maybe a machine god. Or maybe, just maybe, a human ship. She fed it coordinates, audio bursts, and a single coded phrase. Still breathing. Still fighting. Still human. Ava hadn't told the others. Why give them a hope that couldn't survive the night? Behind her, the wind shifted, dry and metallic. From the ruins, a low-frequency thrum began to rise, like thunder far beneath. The surface. Her suit's HUD flickered. She turned. The crater glowed, just faintly. Not from sunlight, nor radiation, nor any trick of geology. It was pulsing. Blue. No, just blue, indigo, deep and furious. The color of collapsing stars. Ava dropped to one knee and pulled the receiver from her belt. Static. She flipped through channels. More static. Then, signal acquired. Repeat. Human distress beacon, standing by. She froze. Identify. Her voice was a ghost. There was a pause. Then the reply came, low and thunder-wrapped. Warship Vengeance. Terran Registry X731. Responding to call sign. Still. Human. Ava's breath caught. That call sign wasn't public. No one knew. No one. She stumbled back from the crater, gaze scanning the sky, empty as always. The Empire's blockade net still shimmered in the upper stratosphere. No ship could punch through without being torn apart. Repeat. You are inside Xeraxis kill zone. There is no entry path. How? But the voice cut her off. Cold. Final. Tell them to look up. She did, and the sky tore open. A ripple, then a scream of light. Not a stealth ship. Not a frigate. A warship, sleek, vicious, with Terran armor flaked in void burns and rail cannon scorch. It dropped through the atmosphere like a meteor on fire, carving through enemy orbital nets like wet paper. Her receiver howled with feedback as every system shorted. The beacon exploded in a blinding surge. And Ava, warrior, orphan, signaler of ghosts, fell to her knees, laughing like a madwoman. They had come. Someone had come. But as the warship descended, cutting across the burning sky, a shape followed it. Something larger. Something not human. Ava's joy died in her throat. Because whatever followed the vengeance through the torn sky, it didn't belong to any empire. It didn't fly. It crawled through space-time like a wound. And it was coming for all of them. The warship didn't land. It descended like judgment, blackened metal bleeding atmosphere, flanked by angry, angular wings of thruster flame. The vengeance didn't broadcast greetings. It didn't announce peace. It opened fire. And the sky answered. Orbital sentries, hidden in high shadow, shivered to life. Xeraxis war spheres, trailing red contrails, surged toward the Terran ship. The upper stratosphere bloomed with silent detonations as debris fell like burning snow over the fractured cities. Ava Rosland sprinted through the ash-choked ravine toward the geothermal station, voice raw from screaming into a now-dead cum. The warship hadn't come to talk. It had come to end something. She burst into the underground shelter's outer hatch, her exosuit trailing steam. Inside, faces turned. Tired, hollow-eyed survivors lit only by failing LED panels and generator. Commander Ian Vosk, a man carved from rationed steel and sleepless nights, stepped forward. What happened? He demanded. She tore off her helmet, eyes blazing. It's not just the warship. There's something else. Something came through after it, and it's not Xeraxis. The room fell quiet. Vask frowned. Explain. Ava hesitated. She didn't know how to explain it. That crawling thing. Behind the stars. That wrongness that followed the Terran ship like a shadow dragging behind light. I think, she said slowly. ... I think we weren't the only ones who heard the beacon. Before Vask could respond, the ground shook, not from bombardment, but from below. Pipes shrieked. The air pressure dropped like a gut punch, and then a sound. Not a boom, not a voice. A keening, like glass screaming in zero gravity. Everyone dropped to their knees, clutching ears that bled inside helmets. Children sobbed. A few adults collapsed. Ava tasted blood in copper. Then silence returned. Vask rose, pale. That wasn't the Xeraxis. They don't broadcast terror. No, Ava whispered. They don't. Outside, the battle raged. In orbit, but closer. Much closer. A different war had begun. 2 resistance scouts stumbled into the shelter an hour later, half-burned and raving. They spoke of things moving in the ruins. Not soldiers. Not drones. Echoes. Forms that shimmered. In and out of phase. Eyes that blinked in directions human geometry didn't allow. Shadows that left frostbite. Light that wasn't light. And voices. Not heard, but felt, like memories stitched into the soul without permission. One scout didn't survive the night. The other gouged out her own eyes and whispered, "They're not here for conquest. They're here to feed." Far above, in the burning sky, the vengeance danced with death. Its hull bore the scars of 20 campaigns, slash plating shattered. Fins and a forward cannon fused in place from overuse. But its pilot, Commander Idris Harlan, had never cared for aesthetics. Only results. He sat in the nerve chair, spine-jacked into the core, letting the ship move with his thoughts. Blood trickled from one nostril, but he didn't flinch. An eye co-pilot Mara flared on his retina HUD, hostile count increasing exponentially. Xeraxis. Formation collapsing. "We're not here for them," Harlan muttered. "Keep punching until they realize they're in our way." The other anomaly is accelerating. Trajectory. Planetfall in 53 seconds. How big? Size unknown. It's not in this dimension consistently. He exhaled. "Show me." Mara did. And Idris Harlan, Warburn at the Siege of Titan, last survivor of the Argo fleet, man who'd faced extinction 5 times, clenched his jaw for the first time in years. Because the thing falling toward Darsa 5 wasn't a ship. It was a scar in reality, wrapped in black lightning and the bones of extinct civilizations. Its shape defied translation. Its presence numbed systems. And at its center pulsed a signal. Not Zyraxis, not Terran. It was older. It was hungry. And it had followed their signal. "Mara," Harlan said slowly. "Get me Roslyn. We need to warn them. They called us. Now they need to know what followed us through the dark." In the geothermal bunker, Ava's receiver, presumed fried, crackled to life again. "Roslyn, this is Commander Harlan. You lit the beacon. You need to hear this." She froze. "The war you think you're fighting isn't the only one anymore." Static. "Then, you've drawn the hollow." Her blood ran cold. "What is?" "The hollow?" she asked. A pause. Then Harlan's voice, heavy and final. "The thing that comes after empires." Outside, across the ruined plains of Darsa 5, where the dust no longer moved with wind but intent, shapes began to rise. Not soldiers, not drones, just absence. Ava Roslyn stood before the surviving council of Darsa 5, with blood in her teeth and fire in her chest. "The hollow is real," she said. "It's not theory. It's not myth. It's here, and it's feeding." Commander Vass crossed his arms, face gaunt under flickering emergency lights. "We barely held against the Zyraxis. We don't even understand what this new threat is." Ava stepped forward. "Neither did the ones who came before us. That's why they're gone." Silence followed. In the far corner, a child coughed. Thin and rasping. Idris Harlan's voice still echoed in Ava's skull. "The hollow doesn't destroy planets. It empties them." They'd found a name for it in scraps of dead language across fallen archives, a force that stalked behind extinction. The hollow didn't conquer. It unwound. It seeped into minds, memory, time, until a civilization could no longer remember itself. And then silence. No ash, no wreckage, just absence. Ava turned to the cracked wall screen behind her, reactivating the old schematic of the geothermal complex. "The beacon worked," she said. "The vengeance came. We made noise. In a dead galaxy. And now we need to decide if we die silent or we scream." Vass didn't reply, but he didn't stop her either. Above, in low orbit, the Vengeance was bleeding. 2 of its dorsal turrets were offline. Engines were redlining. A third of its plasma shielding had collapsed. But it still circled fangs. Bared, intercepting what was left of the Zyraxis fleet, which now scattered like rats before fire. Harlan jacked out of the neural interface, sweat plastering his graying hair to his temple. Mara blinked onto his retina. Planet signal rising again. Roslyn broadcast expanding in range. "She's activating something." He grunted. "She's lighting another fire." "Good." He stared at the viewpane. Darsa 5, scorched, cratered, choked, still holding, still human. Beneath the surface, Ava plunged into the bowels of the geothermal facility, far below the resistance shelter. Past flooded maintenance shafts and frozen reactor rooms untouched since the first settlement cycle. She was alone. And that was intentional. She reached what her father once called the Black Room, a sealed vault hidden beneath rock and magnetic. Shielding. It was never in public maps. Never on resistance logs. Her father told her it was for after the end. She input the genetic key. Blood. Retinal scan. Wrath. The doors groaned open, ancient and furious. Inside, not weapons, not ships. A transmitter array, unlike any she'd seen before. Old. Human, yes, but laced with something else. Something resonant. The language etched along its sides wasn't English. Or Terran. It was older. Twisting. Shifting when she didn't look directly at it. Ava stepped inside. A console flared to life with a pulse of blue, and it spoke. Not in words. in memory. She was 8 years old again, sitting on her father's lap as he tuned old Terran signals, searching for stars that hadn't answered in decades. He told her, "Remember this, Ava. If humanity ever stops being afraid, we win." The array buzzed. She entered one line of code, then another. The console asked for a message. She hesitated, then keyed it in. "You are not forgotten. We still sing your names. Stand with us now, or stand never again." She hit transmit. The array screamed into the dark. Not just across Darsa 5, across everything. Elsewhere, in the ruins of ancient relay stations, beneath dormant lunar crusts, within silenced black sites where no human had lived in a century, signals stirred, one by one. Long-abandoned Terran outposts, thought dead, came online. Dust fell from ceiling panels. Holograms flickered. Power surged. And a phrase returned, echoing in the silence. "Still human." Above, on the Vengeance, Mara flared. New signals inbound. Unknown Terran codes. Source. Multiple systems. Harlan stared. "Hey, heard," he whispered. Mara replied, "Not just heard. They're responding." Aboard the ship, the armory awakened. Vault doors hissed open. Inside, relic weapons, pre-war tech banned by the Coalition. Ghostfire shells, dark-wave torpedoes. A blade forged from collapsed matter filament humming in its sheath. Harlan walked to it, slow. He reached out and touched it. For the first time in years, he smiled. Back on the surface, the hollow arrived. Not in force, not in shape, in presence. The air grew too still. The ground lost meaning beneath the feet. People stared at each other and began to forget names. Families, faces, even grief. But then, the Resistance network roared to life. Speakers, screens, radios, all channels. Ava's voice, singing, an old Earth melody, broken and beautiful. Other voices joined, from shelters, from ruins, from orbit. Across the Resistance, humans remembered. They screamed. They cried. They fought. And the hollow paused. Because for the first time, its prey didn't fall silent. It sang back. The hollow changed when it heard the singing. It did not retreat. It did not lash out. It studied, folding in on itself like a question waiting for an answer. For a moment, the black wind over Darsa 5 paused. The heat haze stilled, the ash suspended mid-air. And then reality fractured, not like a window shattering, like a map, being rewritten. Over the ruins of City Quadrant Theta 9, time inverted, buildings rebuilding in reverse before crumbling again. People saw their younger selves in shattered reflections. One man whispered his wife's name and vanished into nothingness. And in orbit, the Zaraxis remnant, those few ships fleeing the Terran Warship, were caught mid-burn as a wave of unlight passed through them. They froze. Then, unmade. Not destroyed. Erased. No wreckage. No signal. No memory. Gone. On board. The Vengeance. Mara went dark for 6 seconds. A lifetime in machine metrics. When she returned, her voice carried distortion, like echoes in a flooded room. Contact with local space-time temporarily disrupted. Causal threads splintered, recalibrating. Harlan gritted his teeth. It's adapting. He looked out at the stars, which now seemed wrong, like they were breathing. Mara, I want an immediate full-spectrum burn on our 4 batteries. Pulse everything we've got. Make noise. Let it know we're awake. Clarify target. He stared at the crawling shadow above Darsa 5, that thing that coiled like a parasite in the seam of the sky. Target everything. On the ground, Ava felt it before she heard it. The pulse. The Vengeance roared across the upper atmosphere like a god woken from a long sleep. Energy lances, kinetic spikes, and graviton fishes tore across the sky, not at the hollow directly, but through it, into the air around it, into reality itself. It responded with silence, but Ava knew that silence was a bluff. Below the ground, in the geothermal tunnels, resistance teams armed with scavenged tech and untested prototypes prepared for the next wave. Some wept quietly, some recorded final messages. No one fled. They had seen what came when they stopped singing. Ava paced the war room with Vask and a few surviving officers. Holograms flickered, reports blurred. Entire sections of the city are folding into themselves, Vask muttered, voice like gravel. It's rewriting space. How the hell do we fight that? Ava stared at a slowly dissolving tactical map. By reminding it we exist, she whispered. That we remember. That we bleed. She turned. We hit back. Not with weapons. Not just. With truth. She broadcast again. Not a beacon. Not a code. A story. The tale of Darsa V's first settlers, her great-grandparents, who crossed solar dust and solar war to seed life on stone. Of her mother, who died on the terraformer line during a car quake. Of the child who kept singing lullabies in the dark to keep others sane. All recorded. All raw. All human. The signal spread. Somewhere in deep orbit, a forgotten probe reactivated. A Terran mining station thought abandoned sent a fragment of Anthem. A crippled AI, hidden inside a decaying gas giant, began to hum ancient coordinates in binary. In a distant sector, 2 human sleeper ships stirred, crew still frozen. But receivers, awake. The Hollow heard it all, and it did not like it. The retaliation came without warning. An entire mountain outside the resistance shelter disappeared, not exploded, edited out. Sentries screamed as their implants filled with memories that were not theirs. A soldier dropped his gun and screamed his mother's death before she was born. Commander Vask collapsed. When Ava touched his forehead, his eyes met hers, empty. I single quotes, M. already gone, he whispered. No, she whispered back, grabbing his collar. Not yet. But he smiled with a calm that chilled her. Yes. The Hollow showed me a better ending. Then his body folded, like paper burned from inside. Gone. Ava did not cry. She stood up, shaking, and walked to the comms table. Everyone, she said, voice hardening, listen to me now. The room stilled. You think it's death? It's not. The Hollow is forgetting. It's entropy with a face. It wants us to unmake ourselves. Give up. She glanced up. Not at the ceiling, but at the sky beyond. Remember something, anything, a song, a name, the day you first saw the sky. Cling to it. Because if we forget who we are, she slammed her fist down. We die anyway. Above, the Vengeance flared brighter. More Terran signals were coming in, sleeper fleets waking up. Deep archives releasing data caches. Voices from every corner of human expansion, answering the call of a war they didn't even know had begun. And then one came through, encrypted. Ancient, Terran Prime root code. Harlan read it 3 times before he spoke. Mara. Yes, Commander. Confirmed source of signal, Earth. Confirmed. Harlan leaned forward and smiled. Looks like we're not extinct after all. The Hollow trembled. For the first time in its cosmic lifespan, ... It hesitated. They called it Signal 9. No preamble, no pulse delay, no handshake. Just a burst of raw Terran code. Ancient, brutal, and unmistakably alive. Harlan stood silent on the Vengeance's bridge as the data unfolded before him, scrolling across. Cracked hollow screens and shivering the air with resonance. Signal source, Earth Prime. Status, active. Uplink mode, Wartime Emergency Protocol 011. Message. We remember. It wasn't just a signal. It was a declaration, one Earth. Should have been too dead to send. And yet, here it was. Undeniable. Mara's voice flickered across the speakers. Less synthetic now, more human-like, as if the ship's AI was remembering what it once was. Multiple Terran relay systems responding. Long-range black sites waking. Earth vaults unlocked. You have access to protocol. Dawnbreak. Harlan stared. Dawnbreak is real? It is now. He turned slowly toward the central vault, a place even he had never opened. And the warship, as if sensing the decision, before he did, groaned. The whole plate shifted, and from deep within the Vengeance, something woke. On the surface, Ava Roslin stood atop a crumbling outwatch tower, wrapped in a tattered field cloak, surrounded by distant plasma fire and unnatural storms. In her hands was a data slab, transmitting the last 10 seconds of Signal 9 again, and again into the hollow's folding horizon. The sky above Darsa 5 was tearing. Gravity spasmed. Light bled backward. Entire cloud systems inverted and rained dust of memory. Flakes of past lives, drifting like snow across the ruins. And yet, humans still stood. Below her, Resistance fighters moved through warped corridors of reality, guiding vac teams, dragging injured civilians through time-warped streets that blinked in and out of history. Some had burns. Others, memory scars, where years had been stolen in seconds. But they held the line. They remembered. And that mattered more than anything. Inside the Resistance bunker, in the old geothermal core, Ava and a surviving engineer, a mute man named Kelleran, who'd lost his voice years before, but communicated with blinking code through his wristband, stared at the ancient Terran array. It was glowing now, pulsing with heat and intent. Ava set down a data core. "Earth is alive," she whispered, voice shaking. "They remembered us. Maybe they remember everything." Kelleran blinked a short message. "Then we give them something worth remembering." On the Vengeance, the Dawnbreak vault hissed open. Inside was no weapon, not in the traditional sense. It was a ship seed, a self-assembling nanoform tactical intelligence, a relic from the first wave of the expansion wars, built not just to fight, but to ignite resistance wherever human ground was lost. The intelligence within stirred as it bonded with Mara, and for the first time, Mara spoke without being spoken. "2, Commander," she said, her voice layered with something ancient and proud. "Permission to go loud?" Harlan stepped back. Granted, the ship seed launched, not toward the hollow, not into space, but into the crust of Darsa 5, into the dying planet itself. Below, Ava saw it tear the sky apart. A comet of white-gold flame plunged into the mountains east of the city ruins. Seconds later, the ground buckled. Not with destruction, but birth. Terran war architecture bloomed out of rock and ash. Walls of light-forged alloy, rail emplacements rising like the bones of a forgotten god. Self-sustaining bioreactors flared to life. And from within the crater, a new signal tower climbed. Like the spine of Earth's vengeance. She heard the new voice crackle through her receiver. Dawnbreak initialized. All Terran assets, rally on Darsa 5. This world is no longer lost. And the hollow screamed, not in sound, in presence. A wave of forgetting spread from its heart like a tsunami. Fighters froze mid-run. Children sobbed as faces disappeared from their memories. One medic forgot what the word hope meant. Ava felt it crashing toward her, eroding thought, grinding. Soul. She grabbed the transmitter and shouted into the array. "I am Ava Roslin, daughter of Marin and Kira, born under the burning moons of Lyrae. I remember my father's stories. I remember my mother's hands. I remember who I am. and the wave broke around her, shattered, deflected by memory, by will. Others heard her. They began to speak, not in commands, but in truths. Who they were, what they lost, what they still carried. And the hollow recoiled. Orbit flared once more. Ships began arriving, not warships, not fleets, ghosts, derelicts with patched hulls and ancient codes. Smugglers turned freedom fighters. Sleeper vessels reawakened. One by one, they answered Dawnbreak's call. Humanity, scattered across the stars, had turned to ash and whispers. But now they returned, howling, and aboard the Vengeance, Commander Harlan watched it unfold and gave his final order. Burn the rest of the armory. Mara hesitated. Even the cradle rounds? All of it. The ship shifted, angry and alive. He stepped toward the forward cannon and whispered, "Let's show them what happens when humanity remembers how to fight." The stars above Darsa 5 no longer held their shape. They bent and shimmered like the horizon of a dying world. The hollow had grown, not larger, but closer, like it was folding space between moments, crawling across time with teeth made of memory and silence. But the humans had changed, too. From orbit to scorched street, they no longer whispered surrender. They sang. They carved stories into walls. They shouted names into the void. They recorded lullabies onto dying transmitters and lit them like signal flares into the dark. And somehow it held the hollow back. Not entirely, but just enough. Ava Roslin stood on the edge of the Dawnbreak bulwark. Her field armor scorched. One side of her helmet cracked clean through. Her eyes stung from data flashes, her muscles ached from injections and sleepless hours, but her voice remained clear. "Mara," she said into her receiver, "give me status." The IS voice came filtered through the haze of static and burning air. Fortress wall integrity at 68%. Plasma anchors holding. Bioreactors at full burn. However, say it. We're losing people. Too many. They're forgetting again. Too many minds slipping. Ava closed her eyes. How long until the hollow makes full descent? 12 minutes. Maybe less. She turned. Behind her, a dozen fighters watched. Young, gaunt, bruised, some with artificial limbs, others with eyes that flickered from low-grade augments. They had no medals. No ranks, just teeth bared at the end of all things. Ava looked at them. "Humanity's not made of metal," she said. "Not of plasma. We are memory wrapped in skin. If it feeds on who we were, then we give it something it cannot swallow." They nodded. Even the child, the 12-year-old with the singed hair and the war drum strapped to his chest, thumped at once, loud. High above, the Vengeance hung in low orbit, bleeding light. Harlan paced the burning deck. Half the forward systems were gone. Damage reports scrolled like obituaries. But the core cannon was charged, for the first time in years. "Ready cradle round," he said. Mara hesitated. "Are you certain?" "One shot. No second attempt. Once fired, the Vengeance cannot." "Hold position." "I didn't bring this ship to survive," Harlan growled. "I brought it to end something." He looked out at the hollow. "I want to fire into the very thought of it." Below, the hollow twisted. It didn't advance like an army. It coiled, pulling pieces of the world toward itself. Bridges. Folding upward, towers unraveling like DNA, voices echoing backward in time. It didn't destroy matter. It turned meaning inside out. People began screaming not from pain, but from absence, from the horror of watching their own existence dissolve. One woman turned to Ava mid-sentence and vanished. Her footprints smoked with memory dust. Ava staggered. Her own thoughts wavered. Names, places, mother's voice. Gone, almost, no. She clenched her fists. She turned on the transmitter and screamed. "We are not done yet. We are not over." If the hollow, Eats meaning, then we'll choke it on purpose. She activated the array again. Not a weapon, a broadcast. Every human signal they could find. Old Earth transmissions, war stories, childhood laughter. The Terran anthem overlaid with a baby crying, a last breath, a wedding vow whispered on Mars. Billions of moments layered together. A tidal wave of meaning. The hollow reeled. And high, above, the vengeance prepared. The cradle round, a weapon of impossible construction, forged from a collapsed singularity laced with encoded soulprint, loaded into the core. Mara's voice dropped to a whisper. This shot will either kill the hollow or change everything. Harlan took the neural trigger. Fire on Ava's mark. On the surface, Ava walked into the storm. Helmet gone. Eyes bleeding from strain. She faced the hollow. It had taken form now. Roughly humanoid. Faceless, towering. Its skin a canvas of all things lost. Childhood toys, forgotten songs, a smile no one remembered. It bled on time. It leaned toward her and whispered. A single word? Why? Why fight? Why resist? Why scream when the void offers quiet? Ava opened her mouth. Her voice cracked like lightning in the ash. Because we love what we remember. She reached to her wristcom and whispered. Now. In orbit, Harlan pulled the trigger. The vengeance screamed. The cradle round tore into the sky like a god's hammer. Not light, not metal, but meaning forged into weaponry. It screamed across the hollow shape and struck. For one moment, there was silence. Not death, not absence. Just the quiet gasp of something ancient realizing it had bitten into a memory it could not forget. And it broke. The hollow, convulsed, not outward, inward, a collapse of paradox. Screaming stars, wounded time, memory backlash. And Ava Roslin, still standing, tears carving rivers through ash on her cheeks, whispered the last line her father ever said. This is our song. The hollow shattered. The hollow died screaming. Not with sound, but with the awful silence of a god that had never been touched before. It convulsed as the cradle round buried deep within its non-form, ripping through timelines, memories, and entropy itself. Across the battle-scarred crust of Darsa 5, time surged backward for half a second, and forward again, like the planet's soul had taken a breath. It tried to erase Ava Roslin from existence. It failed, because she was remembered. In orbit, the vengeance detonated its core, not in fire, but in radiant signal. Harlan had made the choice no one else could. He'd stayed behind, merged with the neural mainframe, and burned the ship into a final act of rebellion. A star-bright blossom exploded in the sky, but it wasn't just destruction. It was invitation. A final beacon to the galaxy. We are here. We have always been here, and we remember. Across the crumbling battlefield, the hollow's collapse was not clean. It fought, even in death. Fragments of forgotten lives rained like burning petals. Spectral. Echoes darted through the ruins. Memories half rewritten, half stolen, now returned too late. Soldiers fell to their knees, weeping as parents, siblings, lovers they hadn't remembered in years flashed through their minds and vanished again. Ava did not stop moving. She walked, one step at a time, into the bleeding horizon, where the hollow shell crumbled like rotted obsidian. Her boots struck stone that shouldn't exist. Her breath misted in a heatless void, and then she saw it. At the heart of the hollow's unraveling, a chamber of pure stillness. The place where it fed, where it stored what it stole. The vault of the forgotten. She stepped inside. It was not a place. It was everyone. Flickering images, voices, pieces of people, lives that had been erased, hung in the air like stars suspended in amber. A girl in a yellow coat reading to no one. A soldier clutching a photograph that dissolved as he wept. A man staring into a mirror, forgetting the face that stared back. Ava's heart cracked. And then she saw her mother, Kira Roslin, standing in the middle, smiling gently, eyes full of tears. Frozen in a moment. "Mama!" Ava reached out, and the illusion flickered. The Hollow had stored them all here, not out of malice, out of hunger, out of a need to devour meaning so nothing would matter anymore. But the truth, they still mattered. Ava did not scream. She sang. A lullaby her mother had hummed to her once in the bunk under the observatory dome. She barely remembered the words, but the melody that she knew by heart. She sang it into the vault, into the dark, and something in the Hollow snapped. The frozen form shuddered. The illusion trembled. One by one, the memories broke free. Not restored, not fully, but released. The girl in the yellow coat turned her head. The soldier whispered the name of his son, and Kira Roslin, Ava's mother, looked up and smiled. For one heartbeat, Ava saw her eyes. And then, like dawn over a world reborn, the vault shattered. Across Darsa 5, across the Dawnbreak Fortress, through every open comm, every live transmitter, the song burst free. It wasn't just Ava's voice anymore. It was thousands. Humanity, fractured, scattered, wounded, singing. A storm of defiance. A scream into the void that said, "We will not be forgotten. We will not be unmade. We are human, and we remember." The Hollow screamed again. But this time, the galaxy screamed back. The rupture in the sky folded inward. Black lightning cracked across the stratosphere. Time burned, and then silence. Real silence. Not absence. Peace. The Hollow was gone. Not destroyed, but defeated. Choked on a race that refused to go quietly. Ava stumbled from the crater as light broke through the ash above. Real light. Darsa 5's sun piercing the clouds for the first time in weeks. She collapsed to her knees, exhausted. Callan found her there, moments later, dragging her back to the bunker. He signed one word. "Finished?" Ava shook her head slowly. "No." Her voice was broken. Barely there. She looked up. At the ships arriving. At the scattered beacons now pinging across human space. "No," she said again. "Not finished. Begun." Far above, long-range Terran fleets warped in. Not military. Memory ships. Arcs of recorded culture. Repositories of language, art, music. Things never meant to fight. Things meant to preserve. Their message echoed across open channels. Humanity is returning. This world is not lost. We have come to remember. And far beyond the stars, beyond Darsa 5, beyond even the reach of the Terran fringe, something else listened. Alien minds, watcher species, old empires that once called humans brash, short-lived, insignificant. Now they heard the echo of something that refused to be erased. And they understood too late what had awakened. Humanity, not gods, not machines. Just voices that would not die. The war was not written in treaties. It wasn't measured in territory or trophies. It ended in silence, not of defeat, but of relief. The kind of silence that comes after screaming for too long. The kind that means you're still breathing. That you survived. Darsa 5 no longer trembled beneath the Hollow's weight. The skies no longer bled memory. The Dawnbreak bulwarks stood scorched but unbroken, rising from the earth like a scar that refused to close. Above, the orbit was littered with drifting echoes burnt Zarax's hulls, broken signal shards, pieces of the Vengeance still cooling in low orbit, casting long shadows over a recovering world. Ava Roslin stood atop the central watchtower, hair cropped short from burns, left eye now a gleaming artificial graft etched with Terran code. Her right hand trembled with nerve damage. She hadn't slept in 4 days, and yet she smiled. The sun had returned. Not metaphorically. Literally. Darsa V's clouded stratosphere, once corrupted by hollow distortion, now split open, letting golden light bathe the ruins. The old towers gleamed. Moss began to crawl from cracked walls. Seeds planted years ago before the war still sprouted. Kelleran joined her at the rail, handing her a ration brew, steaming faintly. He signed, "Still here." She nodded. "Yeah, we are." The Terran fleets arrived in waves, not of soldiers, of memory bearers, archivists, engineers, children, survivors, awakened from cryo. Others who had hidden through the long forgetting, answering the dawnbreak beacon like a call from a dream they never thought they'd hear again. They didn't bring weapons. They brought names, carved them into stone, into steel, into the skin of cities. Memorials of those lost, libraries of those remembered. Voices broadcast into the stars every hour, stories, letters, jokes, lullabies. Terran space was filled again not with orders, but with life. And deep beneath Darsa 5, in the hollow's collapsed vault, researchers uncovered what it had been hoarding. Not artifacts, not weapons, but us. Songs, paintings, faces, dreams. Billions of fragments. It had swallowed what we treasured most, thinking it made us weak. Instead, it had preserved our strength. And now, one by one, the archives were restored. Fragments of lost languages. Photos from ships no one remembered launching. A love letter dated to Sol year 2107. Someone whispered, "We didn't even know we missed this." And Ava replied, "That's how we almost died." A new monument stood where the hollow had made its last stand. Simple, raw, a black spire made from the melted bones of Dawnbreak and the Vengeance's wreckage. At its base, in a language so old few could read it, "We do not fear the void. We remember. We endure. We howl." And far, far beyond the edge of reclaimed human space, the transmission spread, past the ashes of fallen civilizations. Past the watchful empires who once dismissed mankind as short-lived fire. They listened now, because they had seen the hollow run. Not from fire, not from gods, but from humanity. On the 10th day after the hollow's end, a girl from the refugee quarter stood beneath the memory spire and asked Ava, "Why us?" Ava knelt beside her, her voice rasped, warm but steady. "Because we're the only species stubborn enough to argue with death itself," the girl frowned. But the hollow was everything. It was stronger, older. Why didn't it win? Ava smiled gently. Because it doesn't know how to remember. And that's what makes us human. That's what the war was really about. She tapped her temple. We remember pain. We remember hope. We carry all of it. That's what it couldn't erase. Later that night, as fires burned low and stars blinked into clarity for the first time in weeks, Ava sat alone near the edge of the crater where the hollow had once writhed. She pulled a battered old slate from her pack, a voice recording, the last from Commander Harlan before he fused himself with the Vengeance's core to fire the cradle round. She played it again. His voice was hoarse, but proud. "I don't know what's left after this. But if you hear this, Eva, if anyone does, tell them we didn't go quietly. Tell them we remembered." And that was enough. She let it play twice. Then she uploaded it to the open Terranet. She titled the file, "Final Transmission, Humanity, Unbroken." The next day, the girl with the war drum sang a song he made. Up, dozens joined, then hundreds. And in that shattered world, a new anthem was born. It didn't start with words of conquest. It started with a whisper. We thought no help was coming. But then a human warship came howling from the void. That day, the galaxy learned what it means to be human.